Carmen says 4 years ago she moved into a house that was formerly a funeral parlor. And Carmen says it was haunted and terrible things happened to her and her family.
The true story of the haunting in Connecticut begins in 1986 when the Snedeker family moved into their historic home at 208 Meriden Avenue. The Snedekers were desperately trying to find a home in the area so that their son Phillip, who suffers from Hodgkin's lymphoma, could receive treatment at the nearby UConn hospital. And the house on Meriden Avenue seemed like a perfect fit, and the Snedekers rushed to move in.
This new home that you're renting in 1986 because your son was getting care for cancer and you wanted to be closer to the medical facility.
What seemed like a lucky find quickly turned into a nightmare when the family started experiencing paranormal activity, as they reported seeing and hearing unknown forces, being attacked in their sleep, and even experiencing violent personality changes.
I've never seen a monster of any kind, but this is a monster, a real monster.
This is the true story that inspired the terrifying Hollywood film A Haunting in Connecticut.
I have to get my son!
The Snedeker family were just like any other middle-class American family. The family was comprised of Carmen Reed, her husband Alan Snedeker, and their 4 children, Philip, Bradley, Alan Jr., and Jennifer. And Carmen's niece Tammy also lived with the family. At a young age, Philip was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of cancer that affects the body's lymphatic system. And as mentioned, because of Philip's diagnosis, the family had to travel long distances from their home to the UConn hospital for treatment. Eventually, the family felt that it would be better to move closer to the hospital so that Philip would not have to suffer through long and often painful car rides. And so the search began for a home large enough to house the Snedeker family, and pretty soon they found what they were looking for at 208 Meriden Avenue. The 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom home provided plenty of space for the family, and so on June 30th, 1986, the Snedekers signed a lease and moved into the home. The move-in process was pretty seamless for the Snedekers. The children picked their rooms with minimal arguments, and the family moved their belongings into the home. Everything seemed normal until Carmen made a disturbing discovery in the home's basement. Laying amongst the dusty furniture and old boxes were funerary items. The family claimed that the basement had embalming equipment and other materials necessary to run a mortuary. Carmen stated that she had no idea that the home was once a funeral parlor, and she also went on to say that when she initially toured the home, she had no access to the basement because the renovators had blocked the doorway with materials. And by contacting the home's owner, a man by the name of Daryl Kern, Carmen received confirmation that the house was once indeed a funeral home.
And you've learned that the home was
A funeral home. It had been a funeral home. It was built to be a funeral home. The director lived above it. He raised his son there.
Kern stated that the property was once the Hallahan Funeral Home and that it was in operation for decades, and that he did disclose this to the family before they moved in.
The house is a former funeral home. Pulleys that used to lift coffins are still in place. A table once used to prep bodies now holds laundry.
However, this disturbing fact did not prevent Carmen's sons, Philip and Bradley, from claiming the basement as their own bedroom. As the oldest of the Snedeker children, Philip and Bradley wanted a private space of their own, and the basement was more spacious than some of the rooms on the upper floors. And in actual fact, Philip and Bradley reportedly slept in the casket display room down the hall from the embalming room.
When you walked to the bottom of the stairs, there was a big open room, and it had a counter that went completely around the room. That was the south coffin room. That was my bedroom.
The most horrifying aspects about the true story of the haunting in Connecticut dealt with the violent and intense interactions that the Snedeker family claimed they had with the paranormal.
What exactly happened in that house?
Oh, there were so many things. It would take me 2 years to explain it all to you.
The paranormal activity in the home started the night the family moved into the home. And it seemed to target Philip more than any other member of the family. Carmen stated that Phillip started seeing this young man with long black hair all the way down to his hips who would talk to him every day, sometimes threatening him.
My son was telling me from the day we moved in that the house was evil and that he was hearing voices and that there was this man that he could describe very well in great detail in the basement.
However, the spooky happenings started slowly spreading to other members of the family, and it started escalating in intensity, with Carmen claiming that while mopping the floor, the water turned into blood and gave off a putrid smell reminiscent of rotting flesh.
The mop to the floor, and the water turned this deep red, and it was thick, and it had a putrid smell.
And perhaps the most shocking was the claim from both Carmen and Ellen that unknown forces had sexually assaulted and sodomized them.
I was froze. I couldn't move. And then I felt this stinging penetration in my anal area.
Kind of pain that happened. It was horrible pain. It was so penetrating and so much pain. There was no pleasure in this.
While unknown forces physically tormented the adults in the family, they seemed to take a deeper interest in Phillip than ever before. And the Snedekers really started to worry when Phillip's personality began to change, as he became irritable and reckless, often inflicting cruel punishments on his younger siblings.
He had gotten pretty mean and just started attacking Brad constantly.
On one occasion, Phillip placed Bradley on a gurney and spun him around until the younger boy begged him to stop.
I laid down on top of it and was going to cover up with a blanket, and he grabbed me and started spinning me. I started getting scared, and I started, getting flashes of things, and I asked him to stop. He didn't stop right away, but he did stop.
But the worst incident came when he attacked his cousin Tammy and was consequently forced to spend 45 days in hospital.
And that was when another hurdle that was very tough. They came with an ambulance and took him away. And then when we got there to the hospital, they put him in a cot that was basically a straitjacket.
Doctors eventually diagnosed Phillip with schizophrenia after he told them about the entities he saw regularly. But they also noted that the medication that he was on to treat his cancer could not have given him any hallucinations, and it could not have triggered any dormant schizophrenic illness. The Snedeker family then decided that it would be best to send Phillip to live with relatives. And then reportedly Phillip stopped hearing voices and seeing spirits after this.
I guess because of my son's illness, and it was a funeral home, and the things that happened, and that happened over a 2-year period, I could tell you a story every day and tell you something new that you wouldn't recognize.
With such strong indications of paranormal activity, the Snedeker family contacted paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, as well as a priest, to do an exorcism on the house. And on September 6th of 1988, a priest performed an exorcism on the house, and the family reported that the paranormal activity had stopped. And later that same year, they moved out of the house and never returned, thus marking an end to the supposed true story of the haunting in Connecticut.
Well, we feel through our investigation that necrophilia, or abuse of corpses, had occurred in that home.
However, with the Snedekers' fantastical claims of violent paranormal activity, there were a lot of people that were in doubt as to the validity of these claims. The Snedeker family went public with their experiences prior to leaving the residence, and Daryl Kern, the former owner, noted that paranormal activity seemed to escalate whenever the family was behind on rent. And he went on to say that it was purely a scheme to make money. And even the family's neighbor, a lady by the name of Catherine Ultimus, believed that the whole thing was a hoax.
And things just didn't add up.
Ultimus also noted that the family always appeared jovial and happy whenever they were outside, not acting like a terrified family at all. Friends of Phillip also came forward and stated that they also didn't believe the story given his personality, as Phillip was apparently a big storyteller who always wanted to be the center of attention.
Maybe the Snedekers think that this happened in their home. If that's what they believe, then I'm sorry that they had to go through that, because I don't believe it happened.
2 weeks prior to the Hollywood film's release in 2009, more people spoke out against the family's claims, including the new owner of the supposed haunted house.
The whole point with this is, I have a 7 and a 6-year-old home. They have 4 kids or 5 kids that were in the house. If the board creaked in the house, I'd have my kids out of there that night. I don't care if I had to sleep on the street or in the car, in a local motel. You're going to tell me that you experienced all this and you kept your kids there for 2 years?
It also didn't really help matters when news broke that Phillip also had a bit of a drug habit.
As you know, well, as you said before, your son had cancer, and he was taking many drugs.
Yes.
Did he or did he not tell you that he was also taking other illegal substances?
I'm aware that he did take other illegal substances.
He used to come over to our house and tell us that whatever we wanted, we could get and whatnot.
Another red flag came in the form of author Ray Garton, who was hired by the Warrens and the Snedekers to write a book about the alleged haunting. And according to him, he said that not only did he receive conflicting stories from the Snedekers, but the Warrens also told him to ignore those conflicts and to sensationalize the story. And if you've seen some of the interviews that Carmen Snedeker has given, and she's given a few, it does seem that she kind of enjoys the attention, and she doesn't seem to have any problem in recanting the horrific events that her family supposedly went through.
But you're very protective over your family.
I am very protective. They want to live normal lives, and I want them to have a normal life. I don't get to have one, but I want them to.
So what are you doing so that they're allowed to have a normal life as you share this story about their life?
I'm using my name, Reed, my maiden name, my birth name, and it protects them.
While people debate whether the story behind one of Hollywood's most spine-tingling horror films is true or not, the true story of the haunting in Connecticut and the Snedeker family has certainly solidified itself as one of the greatest ghost stories in American history.
Somebody that would deliberately put their family at risk for any kind of financial gain, they're a waste of flesh.
So was this a haunting or a hoax? Personally, I'm going to lean towards it being a hoax, just like I did with the whole Amityville haunting, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.